first general manager, Dr. James Marcus.
Who on earth are those people?
James Marcus is one of the most important men that Rebecca Chambers and Billy Coen will come to know of during the events of the game Resident Evil 0. One of the founding members of the infamous Umbrella Corporation, it would be Marcus's work with the progenitor virus that would form the baseline for Tyrant. His obsession with expanding his research ever further, eventually pushing him into conflict with another Umbrella founder named Oswell Spencer. A conflict that would turn deadly as Spencer wanted T all to himself.
Dr. Marcus?
10 years ago, Dr. Marcus was murdered by Umbrella. You helped them, didn't you?
The story of James Marcus as we know it begins with his education at an undisclosed university in the late 1930s. Marcus would seemingly be quite an astute student of the university and would continue his studious nature beyond his graduation in 1939. This continued involvement with education eventually leading him to meet two of the most important people in his life, Oswell Spencer and Edward Ashford. The trio becoming good friends as they bonded over similar ideals and scientific interests, continuing this friendship even as their lives led them down different paths. For Marcus, he would find work studying at a Swiss university in the field of paleovirology, or the study of extinct viruses. This study eventually leading him to the work of a man named Henry Travis, who had written a book in the 1800s called the Natural History Conspectus. Marcus would read of Travis's 35-year journey in Africa, taking particular note of an entry revolving around a tribe known as the Nidapaya, who, according to the book, had an elaborate flower-eating ritual wherein those who consumed the plants could potentially gain superhuman abilities. Marcus, who had a particular interest in evolving humanity, would consort with his old friend Spencer, who had also read of Travis's African journey. Together, they would plan a voyage of their own, in which Marcus and his protege Brandon Bailey would search for the fabled flower. These plans culminating in a 3-month hunt through the treacherous African terrain until, in December of 1966, they would find the sacred flower which they so sought.
How can they survive underground?
These are no ordinary flowers.
Bailey and Marcus would excavate samples of this fascinating flower, fighting off constant attacks from the Nidapaya tribe who were trying to defend their sacred ground. Despite these conflicts, though, the pair would succeed in their mission, bringing their samples back to begin their exciting new research. However, they would swiftly hit a brick wall, as even though they could grow the recovered flowers, it was found that these new plants lacked the ability to produce the progenitor virus that was embedded in those in Africa. This lack of results would form a rift between Marcus and the Swiss university, who had helped foot the bill for his expedition. And so, with no more funding, Spencer would offer to pay with the use of his foundation to see the promise of progenitor brought to life, on the caveat that the research be done at the Spencer estate and that their results not be broadcast to the larger scientific community. Marcus and Bailey would agree to these conditions, but for over a year would fail to recreate the miracle plants that grew in Africa. It would also be during this time that Spencer would begin musing with the idea of forming a corporation to offload some of the costs of the progenitor research away from his foundation. He would call this new formation the Umbrella Corporation, and with the aid of other like-minded individuals, he would found the company, enlisting a reluctant Marcus as one of its inaugural members. However, while research into progenitor was promising, it had virtually hit a standstill by 1968, as Marcus and Bailey had all but run out of viable flowers from their time in Africa. This lack of samples would prompt Bailey to suggest another trek back into the Nidapaya lands so that their research could continue. Spencer would agree to the new expedition, but this time he wanted to ensure that Nidapaya wouldn't be a problem. He would arrange for a security detail to accompany the trip, and as Marcus and Bailey made their preparations, Spencer would suggest that Marcus instead stay in Arclay. Initially confused, Spencer would tell the pair that Marcus's time would be better spent as director of their newly constructed training facility, suggesting that his research would be better realized in a laboratory that was well equipped to deal with his explorations. Marcus would agree with Spencer's assessment, and so he would split with Bailey, leaving his protege to establish a facility in Africa, while he assumed the role of director in Arclay.
I'm unfamiliar with
Attention! This is Dr. Marcus. Please be silent as we reflect upon our company motto. Obedience breeds discipline. Discipline breeds unity. Unity breeds power. Power is life.
With Bailey having established a direct line to the source of the progenitor virus, research into its capabilities could fully begin in earnest for Marcus and his peers in the Umbrella Corporation. He would begin his studies with a spate of animal trials, largely leaving the duties of actually running the training facility to his assistant director. However, despite his devotion to the virus, it would be nearly a decade before Marcus would see a true breakthrough in his research. In September of 1977, he would find his first promising results after splicing Leach DNA into progenitor. Dubbing this new creation T, or Tyrant, he would notice several interesting changes when he tested it with his animal subjects. Different species that were subjected to T would evolve in different ways, with the most successful being a monkey that was chosen to represent mammalia. This discovery would push Marcus into a new stage of his research, one where he believed that the next logical step was testing on humans. To this end, Marcus would turn to the students studying in the halls just above him, covertly exposing them to the virus and seeing how they would react to its effects. Marcus's thirst for results driving him to torture and kill no fewer than 20 students of the training facility, subjecting those who survived the initial exposure to rigorous torture as he explored how resilient T could make its host, disposing of the dead in the facility's sewers when they were no longer of use.
What could have done this?
They must have been used as test subjects in Marcus's research.
Luckily, this brutality would be short-lived, as the facility would be shut down in 1978 as Marcus began to pull further and further away from his former associate Spencer. A rift that had begun since the inception of the Umbrella Corporation had reached a boiling point, as Spencer was tired of being left in the dark on Marcus's progress. He would enlist the aid of the only two students Marcus had ever respected, William Birkin and Albert Wesker, to steal the data that Marcus was withholding. For Marcus's part, he would notice tampering in his office, signs that someone was trying to acquire his work, and he was sure it was Spencer. He would make plans to take his findings to the Umbrella Executive Directors Board, hoping that such strides would award him with the reins to take control of the corporation and further fund his Leach-filled studies. But before he would get that chance, Spencer would make his move. While Marcus continued his work in isolation, Spencer would arrange for a unit of soldiers, accompanied by Wesker and Birkin, to infiltrate the facility. A mission that would see the devoted doctor killed, as he realized that he was betrayed by his two best beloved pupils. James Marcus is one of the most important men that we come to know of at the Arclay training facility. A brilliant scientist who took the first great leaps into one of the most devastating viruses the world would ever see. And while he may not have survived to see the havoc that his explorations would eventually bring, he would no doubt be proud when his beloved leeches eventually kick-started the events that would bring the Umbrella Corporation to its knees.
Who are you?
It was I who scattered the T-virus in the mansion. Needless to say, I contaminated the train, too.
What?
Revenge. On Umbrella.